Well, hello to you, and I hope you have had a restful and peaceful last few hours. And I was up early as usual, and making use of the hours, of course, by looking on my Facebook page and seeing people and making connections with them. And after last night's service with the Liverpool Christian Spiritualist, at which I gave a short address, as is my wont, only on invitation, of course. And I thought about the fun and laughter we'd had in amongst the serious stuff. And I've been asked so many times about, if there is a life after death, a life after this life finishes, and if we do go on to something and somewhere else, what's it like? Where is it? How can it be? And even people who have always believed that to be the case sometimes find themselves wobbling for one reason or another and thinking, well, maybe this is all there is and there is nothing else. Perhaps, something's happened in their lives, circumstances, and they feel a little despondent and think, well, this is it. However, what I wanted to do was reassure everyone that there is a life after this life, and it is an identifiable place, a space, and try and give you some idea of my knowledge of that firsthand, tell you some of my experience of that, and talk to you about the fact that Jesus, who is acknowledged, I would think, by all religious belief systems and all religions, at least as a prophet, as a holy person, someone of great wisdom and miraculous powers of healing. And he was famously heard to say and reported as saying by his followers that he would go before them to prepare a way, and that he said, in his Father's house there are many mansions. Now that has caused a lot of conjecture and problem in modern age, because people are saying, well, that doesn't sound right. A bit like the camel going through the eye of a needle, which is what apparently he was reported as saying, that a rich man couldn't get into the kingdom of heaven. It would be like a camel going through the eye of a needle. Well, what you have to look at is that all this was said in Hebrew, Ivrit, ancient Hebrew, it agreed. And of course, as we know, our old languages don't bear that much resemblance to our modern day language or even usage. And it was translated out of that language into Greek, which was then the language of scholarship, and Latin, of course. And from that was translated eventually in the Middle Ages to European languages like English. And whether the fate that befell some of those early transcribers of the language into the English we know is dreadful, because they were actually killed off for doing it, until eventually something went click and it became okay to do that. Mainly because, of course, the priests held the power, because they were the people who could read and translate for their congregations, being mostly illiterate. And we will gloss over that. The fact is that the translations are questionable. You know, I remember hearing that a camel going through the eye of a needle was something different again. It was something to do with net making for fisher people, and you know, putting a needle into something that was really tough. But anyway, or like a rope into the eye of a needle, which was too big for it. Sewing people won't understand that when you're trying to thread a piece of cotton through a needle. Difficult. The best of times. Now, the thing is this, that a house, Jesus said he was going to go to his father's house, which had many mansions. The house in the Hebrew at the time was Be'etav, which is the house of father's house, meaning an earthly. That was how earthly dwellings were described. Be'etav. So that's the house, but it also meant dwelling place. Could be a tent, for instance. And the mansions, that is also, it could be considered also rooms, or a room. So rooms in a house makes a lot more sense, doesn't it, than many mansions in a house. So we have to look at that and take it with a pinch of salt. I think what Jesus was saying was that, yes, he was going to the place of his Father in heaven, that when he was there, he would prepare dwelling places and rooms for his friends and disciples, and of course everybody else who followed. And unfortunately, as we know, my phone, I shall turn it off. Why I don't turn it off when I should, I'll never know. Perhaps it's a sort of musical accompaniment to my talk. Yeah. So anyway, we've got over that part. The fact is this: that, you know, when you do go over, there is a dwelling place for you, and there is a room for you. There is room for you. There is a dwelling place for you, and it isn't at all difficult. Unless, of course, you wonder if it's actually true. I can assure you that it is true, and that not only is it true, but that people who are over there can actually communicate back with us, either as spontaneous occurrences. In other words, people who are not mediums or don't know anything about it or aren't interested suddenly get a visitation from a loved one that they can recognize, very often in a sleep condition, when their state of consciousness is altered, or even sometimes as large as life in their earthly environment. I'm not talking about ghostly apparitions, by the way. I'm talking about people that we know and love ourselves. And animals too, because, you know, I am so convinced, because of my own experiences. The first person, I shall call her a person, my cat. I was very frightened when I first started developing this way of life. And I was going to Lewisham Church, to the spiritual circle there, to learn to develop my abilities, which I had no idea about that, but I was taken there, and I was very interested in how it was done, because I'd watched a couple of mediums And I thought there must be something to this. I want to know how they do it. And of course, I found myself sitting in a circle and not wanting to leave, certainly trying to find out everything I could. But my original fears were still with me, so I was still pretty frightened. Didn't want to see anything that wasn't there, if you know what I mean. And I was sitting on the bus, ordinary bus, and I suddenly saw this sort of whirring about in front of me. I looked, I thought, what's going on there? And what built up in this sort of whirling was my cat. Now, I loved my cat. I still love my cat. I loved my cat, Minnie. And she'd run away because we'd moved and things were hard, and she'd run off. And I was absolutely bereft and always thought of her. And there she was. Well, I can tell you this, that when the bus stopped and I had to get off, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay there with my cat that I could see as large as life, as you can see anything you like this cup. Absolutely. That was my first experience. I thought, how wonderful. And so from there on, I wasn't very frightened about seeing anybody at all. I would have welcomed to see my cat again, or anyone else come to that. Although I will say this, that I was a bit nervous of Doris. Now, she'd become my cooperator in spirit. And I was sitting at home one day and studying, and I heard her say, "Oh, I think I'll come and speak with you." And I said, no, I don't want to see you. And she said to me, if you don't want to see me now, when you go up on platform for the very first time on Sunday, that was what I was studying for, you see, trying to look up something, some clever words I might be able to say. She said, I won't be there. You'll look around for me, I won't be there. I said, no, it's all right. So there you are. And since then, I have seen many people, met many people who are living on in the world of spirit, and they are as real as you and me. And where they live changes according to their circumstance and their natural characteristics, their family situations, the people that in whose circles they move. There are people here who, as we know, they have a home life and then they have a professional life, if you like. So there are people who have this sort of relationship with people in their family and with their home. And then they have a relationship with people outside of that, doing different things, perhaps a common interest. And so you get groups of people who are interested in specific matters bonding together in the world of spirit in much the same way as they might do down here. Only, of course, they're much freer because distance is no object. And as we know, nothing costs anything in terms of monetary values or material value. And this is how people live on that other side of life. And when we see them, they very often will come back as they were, as we would recognize them to be. And of course, there are different levels of the spirit world, various dimensions. And those who move in very august circles don't need to recognize each other by, the pimple on their chin or something like this unrecognizable characteristic, outward physical thing. They recognize each other by the inner self, the spirit, because all our spirits are different. You know you're different from the next person. You may have a really strong affinity with that next person, especially if they're family or a lover or a loved one, a partner. But you yourself are an individual and you know that you are unique. How marvelous. We are all made unique. And that uniqueness is what we recognize in others. And even if we become very, very highly evolved and very spiritual over on that other side, we still recognize each other. And of course, it doesn't matter how high up one progresses, you can always drop back down lower. So you can always get back down to what we call the astral plane, which is the next one to this, up, I might add. And that's where, I always joke and say, oh, that's where your Uncle Bill and your Auntie Flo will meet up with you in the ordinary course of events. And that's allowed. And when spirit, however lofty, come down to meet up with us who are down here on that next plane, they will show themselves as they would expect us to recognize them. So, the other thing is, of course, I have experience of that. I did promise that I would talk about my own experience and understanding. And I know that I have been helped very much by people that I've known down here who are now on the other side, as we call it. Or, there are lots of names for it. And this idea about, our Father's house, this is very real. And of course, Jesus himself, referred to God as his Father, and gave us the prayer. He said, say something like this: our Father, Father ours, who is in heaven. And so we are asked to understand that we have a parent, a great creator, a progenitor of ourselves, who is otherwise called God, Great Spirit, Jehovah, Yahweh. People have a name for this omnipotent creator to whom we owe our life, and our eternal life at that. So I haven't looked at the comments. I'm being reminded here, good old Doris, G-O-D. She said, look at your comments. So I see everybody. Oh, Alan. Oh, yeah. Good morning to everybody. Oh, wow, Susan. Yes, that's how you saw your dog the first time, a swirl, and then taking form. Oh, I can put that up. There we are. That's for all time now. Excellent. Yeah. Oh, what was that? I also see somebody said about a daughter. I was seeing my daughter pass dog. It was amazing. Yeah, absolutely. It's really fantastic, isn't it? And the other thing is, that sometimes when we're in absolute extremis, there I was I don't mind telling you this again, but, I was in an MRI machine, and I'm claustrophobic, so I found that so hard. And 3 times I had to press this thing to be taken out. I was in such a state. And they said, look, we're going to send you home in an ambulance. We can't keep doing this. Well, I was going in to have, where is it? It's this one. A great big tumour removed. It had grown through my head and neck and everything. So I knew I had to have this MRI scan. I thought, oh, what can I do? So I sort of prayed and I said, oh, can I go and get my Bible? Well, hold on to that. I'd left it in the locker. They said, as long as it hasn't got any metal on it. Well, of course it had. It got the little posh brass clips on it and everything. I said, it's all right. I'll imagine it. I'll imagine I've got it. And then are you sure? I said, yes. So I sent a request. It was hardly a prayer. It was a request. It was a help. Jesus, can you help me, please? I know you're busy, I said, but if you could just send one of your angels to help me, because I need to have this done, and blah 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 blah. I told him the whole Megillah. They said, well, so we'll send you back through now and just see, So as I've gone in, I had this sort of thing on my head as well. And I had my eyes shut. And this sort of banging started, and I opened my eyes. And there I saw my ex-husband. He was laying down the side of me, leaning on an elbow. He was something like 15 stone. Suddenly, there was no tiny compressed place and me in it. There was this huge vaulted place with Ray laying by the side, looking as he always did, but a bit younger than when he went. And I said to him, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, Jesus asked me to come, so I came." I said, "Yes, but I asked Jesus for an angel." He said, "Well, he asked me to come and I've come." So we chatted and we talked, and it was amazing. We had this wonderful conversation. And then I suddenly heard this voice in these earphones: "We are bringing you out now." And I started to slide out and I started to cry because as I came out, everything became just the same as it was. They thought I was very brave. "Oh, there. I got a chocolate biscuit and a cup of tea." What they didn't know was I was really crying because I wanted to go back and finish the conversation. So you see, I know for sure that people who are over on the other side of life are able to come back in that way. And if they are, then they actually exist. So that's all I can say to you about that. And the other thing is this, that when we do our meditations, our guided meditations in spiritualist circles, we often go to places that become very familiar. They're familiar because they're there. There are halls of learning. There are indeed castles in the air, beautiful places made of crystal and absolutely, it's beautiful. There are some beautiful places over there. And, I just hope that, having listened to me for a little while, that you will be cheered, that you will get some of the comfort that I get from knowing that as a fact. It's not something that's airy-fairy and made up. And Jesus was not a liar. And the people who translated his words may have been slightly mistaken, or we could say that they were trying perhaps to convince people down here that their lives on the other side of life were going to be so much better than the poor lives they had down here. But for whatever reason, they translated those words of Jesus as they did. They didn't really tell the right story, because he was only saying, "I'm going where you will go. I will prepare a way for you, and I will make a space for you. There will be a dwelling place for you, and this is how it is." So it was not difficult, and it was the truth. And but what Jesus didn't say was about all the wonderful other things that he would have known were over there, because he would have seen them too. And those wonderful caves, those beaches, the beautiful landscapes. It's just amazing. And all the people that you've known down here that have gone over there, and when you've gone over there, all the people that come over, you will have this amazing continuation. And yes, there are different things that you'll be doing, because there is progress over there, as one of the principles of spiritualism tells us, and that was given from Spirit, that there is progress open to every human soul. And you remember I mentioned about the halls of learning, these vast libraries. People can sort of expand in their own imagination what they want, but do you know what? All the imagination in the world couldn't tell you about the splendor and the glory and the abounding love that's there, because that's something that we're lacking down here, isn't it? We're lacking that sense of warmth, of love. that should really imbue everything on this planet. But unfortunately, there are other forces at work, and it makes this planet quite an uncomfortable place for a lot of people. So all we can do as spiritualists who know the truth about what life should be can only try and do a bit of good where we can, and try and shed a little love and kindness and compassion where we can, and remember the animals, because they are also there over on the other side of life, and our companion animals, our pets, they wait for us when they go over. The last thing I said to our Holly just before she had to go, we locked eyes. I looked into her eyes, she looked into mine, and I said to her, "I'll see you on the other side." And then she went to sleep. So I know for sure that you will be all right, no matter what. I've just had a look at your comments in case anybody's annoyed or wants to say something. Oh, I see my spirit baby a lot. Oh, that's lovely, Nicola. Yes, I saw my sister, who was never born. She was waiting for my mum. When my mum was passing over, looked out into the garden and I saw this girl. Who's that? Looked at her, and then she said to me telepathically, "I'm your sister." And I felt so ashamed that I hadn't realised who it was. And she said, "I'm waiting for our mother." There, I thought, wow, that's really good. So yes, I think what we need to do, all of us, is share our experiences so that more and more people, don't be afraid to say, that's the other thing, in case people think you're a bit sort of, you're a bit fanciful, tell people the truth. The worst that can happen to somebody is what happened to Jesus. He got crucified for it. And here I must say it's the Romans that crucified people, not the Jews. Although I'm not excusing what went on in those days, because there's always arguments. If you get two Jewish people in a room, you've got 3 political parties and 4 different opinions. But that is something that we understand as Jews. But at the same time, we understand that in those days the Mosaic law held sway. And Jesus was there trying to tell people that, you shouldn't do an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You should turn the other cheek when somebody offends you. That you should forgive, you should have mercy, and forgiveness is the key. And of course, if you want to be psychological about it, we understand that where we have feelings of revenge and hatred, if we can only find that mercy and that forgiveness, it does help us. It helps the person who does the forgiving, as well as that person who has perpetrated wrongdoing. But that's for another time. So I don't know how long I've been chatting. Not too long, I trust. Oh, Nicola, yes, absolutely, yes, yeah, absolutely, yes. And this is the other thing, of course, that we have a problem, don't we, with when people want to discuss when the spirit enters the body. Well, obviously at conception. That's all I would say to that. And it can't be anything else. It's ridiculous. Why would there be a conception, a cataclysmic moment when worlds collide, literally in the thick darkness, in the dark? This amazing moment. Why would the spirit not enter at that time? Why would they wait a few weeks, a few months? I don't think so. So that's something else to for another time to talk about, perhaps, and see if anybody else has some interesting things. Oh, Karen says almost missed me. As my post said 11:30. Oh, I say, have I mistyped again? It was supposed to be 10:30. I am sorry. Well, I'll say God bless to everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. You see over there, there's a lamp on right in front of a picture. That's Doris Stokes, and all the bits and pieces that we're surrounded with here. And I welcome you to my home. And another time we would have had a circle perhaps together here. And in the same way that, of course, we don't have our services in our churches at the moment, but I know that there are plenty of Zoom and StreamYard and so on broadcasts which go out to many hundreds and thousands of people now who perhaps wouldn't ordinarily have come to one of our places of worship and praise and mediumship. So I hope that I've convinced those who are wobbling a little bit about whether there is actually a life after this life, and you know who you are because we've chatted, and that it's actually consolidated your ideas and your knowledge if you are already convinced, and that you have as good a rest of the time today as you can. If you are suffering from any ailment at all, any kind of illness or distress, I wish you better as soon as possible, and we ask the dear Lord to give you healing and easement of your complaint as soon as spiritually possible. There. So I'll let you go now, and I shall continue to have my cuppa, which I enjoy. These are very old cups, you know. I think they're going home. Never mind. But lots of love to you, your families, and your loved ones, both here and in the world of spirit. And may you have the knowledge, the warmth, and the comfort of their love everlasting. Bye for now.